Good morning to everyone who will follow along and watch this edition of the Hall Call interview series and podcast. I am Will Driscoll, the executive director here at the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and I'm always happy to bring you a new edition of Hall Call. Before we get started, as always, I'd like to thank our sponsors and our partners here at the Hall of Fame who allow us to put on Hall Call: Priority Automotive, Davcon Inc., the Beck Foundation, Centera Health Plans, White Claw Hard Seltzer, and Priority Automotive Sports Radio 94.1. They are the ones who allow us to do programs like Hall Call and everything else that we do here at the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. Well, today's a very exciting episode. We get to catch up with one of Virginia's great Olympic champions, who is also using her platform to impact communities across the country. Benita Fitzgerald Mosley from Dale City, Virginia, made history in 1984 when she became the first African-American woman to win Olympic gold in the 100-meter hurdles at the Summer Games in Los Angeles. It was just the second time overall an American woman had won the event. Following her athletic career, however, Fitzgerald Mosley has found her passion in the business and philanthropic worlds, where most recently she was named CEO of Multiplying Good, a national nonprofit organization focused on fueling personal growth and leadership through public service. Of course, she is also a 1998 Virginia Sports Hall of Fame inductee. And so, Benita, I know that this is probably a very busy time for you, but thank you so much for carving some time out to join us today.
Well, thanks, Will. Happy New Year to you.
Absolutely. Same to you. Well, we were talking a little bit beforehand, and it's always great to catch up with inductees. Obviously, we are a Sports Hall of Fame, but part of why we created Hall Call is to really learn about what inductees are doing now. We love athletic accomplishments, but there's much more to the story with our inductees than just what happened on the field. So, tell us about your new role with the organization Multiplying Good. Give us a little bit of background as to what the organization does and what your role is with the company.
Certainly. Yes, I've been on board as CEO of Multiplying Good for a little over 6 months now. So I guess I can't say I'm new anymore, but it's been a pleasure coming on board and joining an organization which has such a strong history of celebrating, cultivating, and connecting people doing public service across the country. And I came on board. I was feeling like this organization was something that aligned with my own personal values. My personal mission is to help people and organizations win gold medals in life and business. And I get to do that every day with Multiplying Good. Our mission is to cultivate greatness through service to others. We do that by celebrating all kinds of iconic, amazing people, from Oprah Winfrey and Shaquille O'Neal to everyday local unsung heroes across the country. We have media partners that shine a spotlight on their great work. We work with our Students in Action program, thousands of students every year that are developing new community service projects themselves and executing them and being recognized for their efforts. And then we're launching just in a few weeks a new online platform we call the Ripple to connect these people doing public service, people in our Multiplying Good network and others, corporations and their employees, et cetera, that are doing public service as well. So it was founded 51 years ago by Jackie Kennedy Onassis. So they've been doing this amazing work for several decades now.
You mentioned the content platform, and we're obviously right here on a content platform for the Hall. So we definitely understand the value of telling stories, the storytelling aspect. How important is it to be able to tell those stories and put that out to not just your followers, but potential new followers and just a broader base of potential supporters?
Absolutely. That's why the Ripple is going to be such a transformational opportunity for Multiplying Good to take the good work that we've been doing for decades and put that in more of a public sphere. And the storytelling is the biggest piece. We do an annual awards event in New York City called the Jefferson Awards. And again, been doing the Jefferson Awards. They've been giving away. In fact, the organization was called the Jefferson Awards Foundation for many, many years. And the morning of the event, we do something called, we have a breakfast and we do something called 1-minute speeches. And so these local unsung heroes that have been nominated from their employer or from their local media outlet that are there, we have dozens of them that are there to be celebrated, and they get up on stage for just a minute and tell their why it is that they do the public service that they do and the impact that they're having on people around the country. And it's really the most special moment. I was flanked by my husband, Ron, and Lisa Gibbons, who was our one of our national award winners, a past amazing newscaster and on Entertainment Tonight and other platforms. And the two of them, between my husband and Lisa, they were kind of like, wrestling over the tissue box because they said, Benita, you didn't tell me that it was going to be like this. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know either. It's my first experience, but hearing those stories, oh my God, it's so heartwarming. And you really see the impact, not only that the service has on the people that they're serving, but that has on the individuals themselves that are doing the service.
Well, when you hear the stories, it's those emotional connections that really start connecting you to your support base. I always tell people when we get to our annual induction events, we have all the speeches. You have your 8, 9, 10 inductees that are going in, and I always tell people who are attending, you're going to laugh, you're going to think, and you're probably going to cry as well because these are people pouring their heart out in such a special moment. So it's so nice to hear that. How does Multiplying Good create some of that activation in the communities? You mentioned some of the big names that are involved, but it's really providing that spotlight and that support to the localized organization. So how do you provide that sort of community activation?
Right. We have we have 11 chapters around the country. And that's primarily on a local level, how we do the direct service, particularly through our Students in Action program. We have advisory boards on the ground from the local community that help connect us to people doing public service. Moving forward, however, we plan to have something I'm calling a ripple chapter, for lack of a better name, but maybe not have the direct service that we're doing through Students in Action. Maybe though through national partnerships with some folks like the Boys and Girls Clubs with whom we have some local partnerships, having more of their chapters doing the Students in Action program without us having to deliver that service directly first. And secondly, connecting people online, but also in real life from the Ripple that will be doing service alongside one another, meeting one another, joining forces. We call it a mega force for good in these local communities. So yes, we are doing so at the local level and are expanding those efforts moving forward.
It's wonderful to hear. And this isn't your first role involved in giving back. You've previously worked for, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I trusted the internet on a lot of this, but you worked for the Fun Play Foundation for League Apps, which supports youth sports management technology. And you were also previously the CEO for the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation here in the US from 2016 to 2020. The goal of that organization was to build thriving kids and communities across the US. With both of those, though, there's a connection to sports and community.
Yes.
What connection do you see that in between sports and building the foundation for a positive and successful community?
Oh, absolutely. Both of those organizations, Fun Play Foundation, which I co-founded when I was VP at a startup. Actually, I worked for a startup for 3 years called Leaps, and they've been giving away their technology for years since they started a dozen or so years ago. And when they brought me on, that was one of the things they wanted to do, was grow that philanthropic side of the organization. Among other things, I also work with the pro leagues and teams that they have relationships with as well. And so we created the Fun Play Foundation. And it's I just got a gift from the now executive director since I left, who sent me a fleece that had the logo on it. And I thought to myself, oh my God, when these things kind of come to life, that really makes you feel good that this is something that's standing alone on its own. I'm still on the board, so I still have a leadership role, but I'm not running it on a day-to-day basis. But they and Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, which was actually inspired by Nelson Mandela 24 or so years ago, his involvement in sport. And the focus is really sports-based youth development programs. And so these are local youth programs that are using sport as a tool for social change. So looking for outcomes beyond just the X's and O's on the field, but what leadership development, what community development can happen through the power of sport, and harnessing that power of sport to do good and make the world a better place. And so, yes, through Fun Play Foundation, through providing technology to fuel those companies and organizations, and then on the flip side, grant making through the Laureate Sport for Good Foundation. Definitely both ways we were able to help local community organizations do more to help kids, particularly those in underserved communities who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to pursue sports.
There are so many stories that come out of organizations like that. Obviously, halls of fame, we are known for honoring the best of the best, but one thing that we've also made a commitment to over the last few years here is providing opportunities for kids to be their best. And whether that's through scholarships, whether that's through mental health initiatives, we just want to make sure that there's a positive atmosphere around youth sports and youth sports development, because there's professional and personal development that comes from sports as well. Are you seeing that in the current landscape of youth sports right now? Are we doing right by all of the youth athletes? And when I say we, I mean stakeholders. Are we doing right by youth athletes in the setup that we're currently providing them?
Well, I would say no, unfortunately. But I have hope that I feel like youth sports are on somewhat of a continuum. We have those, pay to play and travel organizations that do, in many cases, a great job developing young athletes and who aspire to participate in college or in the professionals ranks or in the Olympic Games. And then you have sport-based youth development organizations that are more focused, like I said, on community development, on youth development. And there's a whole lot of organizations in between. A lot of SBYD organizations who actually are putting a lot of kids in college on athletic scholarships, who are going on to do amazing things in sport as well as education. And you have a lot of our pay to play and travel organizations who also give back or who provide scholarships to kids in the community to be able to participate at that level who otherwise couldn't afford it. And so I'm really focused on this group in the middle of organizations who are able to both produce great athletes as well as provide youth development that is so sorely needed in so many communities and for our kids. And we really want to promote really safe places for kids, a lot of coach development and coach education. Safe sport is huge, and ensuring that organizations adopt those safe sport practices to like I said, safety is number one. And of course, this idea of sport sampling, kids not focusing on a singular sport too soon. My parents were great about that. They were both educators. They weren't athletes. They didn't know anything much about sport, but they, every time I showed an interest in a different sport, be it softball or gymnastics, and finally track and field in middle school, they were right there, taking me to the practices or getting me special lessons or something. But they also wanted me to be well-rounded. And so I was a musician as well. I played piano, then violin, and then I became a really good flute player. I was first chair flute and piccolo in my high school band and orchestra, and played a little bit in college as well. And so, for them, making sure I was well-rounded, that I was developing different talents and interests. And then ultimately I'm going to find the things that are most near and dear to me and that I'm best at. And you can't do that if you specialize too soon.
Yeah, well, we have a lot to update your bio with flute and piccolo. That very well rounded. No, it's very interesting. It's all part of the conversation. We have a youth sports mental health and wellness alliance that we partner with the local children's hospital here on, and specialization is one of the drivers in a lot of the mental health issues that we're seeing amongst youth athletes, because of the pressure that comes along with it. When you have that sort of ability, everybody just wants to focus and create your identity around that. So it's very refreshing to hear that sports sampling should be a part of the message. And us as stakeholders, it's also incumbent upon all of us to not just look at the carrot that could be a scholarship or financial gain from sports. It's about a lot of the intrinsic values that come from sports participation. Really, the biggest goal is to keep kids playing. So how can we as stakeholders continue to promote that as we see numbers coming down as far as participation? How can we push kids to continue to play and participate in sports?
Because we got to make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
And, when there's too much pressure on the kids, it's not fun anymore. It feels like a job. And that's the sports, first and foremost, supposed to be fun. There's supposed to be a place for kids to build community and friendships. And I have lifelong friends that I participated in sports with in middle school, high school, and college. And And my daughter is a student athlete now at University of Maryland and running track, of course. And but she was a volleyball player, a varsity volleyball player in high school as well. And so we made sure that she was able to keep both sports going for as long as possible. It wasn't until her senior year that she finally said, in order to be ready for the indoor and outdoor track season, I'm going to have to forego participating on the varsity volleyball team so I can train appropriately in the fall. And what I think people are missing is that when Maya was doing the explosive moves she needed to do to be a hitter on the volleyball court, that explosive action was also the same explosive action she needed to come out of the blocks fast, right? Or to sprint. And so what people are missing is that sports sampling and or being multi-sport athletes are actually better athletes and better in their sport of choice than they would be if they only focused on one sport. Because a lot of times track and field is a very much a straightforward sport for the most part. Well, when you're on the volleyball court, you're moving laterally. And so you're developing muscles that you otherwise wouldn't develop just running straight on a track, right? So, but most Olympians or dual or multi-sport athletes, not only in high school, but in college as well.
Mhm.
And so the best athletes in the world were multi-sport athletes. And so I think people miss that somewhere when they're thinking about, oh, I got to be great here. The only way to do that is to singularly focus on something. Well, it's better for their mental health, it's better for their physical health, it's better all around for their performance if they are multi-sport athletes.
There's tons of data out there to suggest exactly what you just said, that the top athletes globally, nationally, they were playing 2 and 3 sports in high school. So
Yeah.
why are we asking an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old to play one? It just
Makes no
there's a
sense.
disconnect there.
I
There's
think
a
there's a
big disconnect.
fear that they are a fear of missing out, the FOMO,
Mhm.
because they have kids that are doing this full time in one sport and they feel like they're going to fall behind, and they really won't, particularly not at 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
Being introduced to sports early, I think is a key. The sports sampling piece of it, though, is as important at that age, particularly in elementary school and middle school.
Absolutely. And this is a conversation that I'm very passionate about. We could go on and on and on. We might need to schedule more of these episodes, but I do want to kind of connect, your past as an athlete to some current events. And this is an Olympic year. And I mentioned in the intro, you're a 1984 Olympic gold medalist, but that was not your potential first time to be an Olympian. You were on the 1980 U.S. team, qualified for the 1980 U.S. team that did not participate due to the boycott because the Olympics were in Moscow. What do you remember most about that time?
I was 18 years old. I was in my freshman year of college at University of Tennessee. I remember going to the Olympic trials knowing that by that point the boycott decision had been made, but we decided to host the Olympic trials anyway, name an Olympic team anyway. And what I remember is being so young, I guess, and still very much looking forward to the possibility of making the team again in 4 years. What I think I most remember is those people who were at the end of their career at that moment, either that would have been their first and only opportunity to participate or their last opportunity to participate. And I felt most for those folks. 4 years later, look in hindsight, there were a lot of people who made that 80 team who did not come back for
Mhm.
various reasons. And some of them, they just didn't make the team. I mean, track and field is very cut and dried. We have one big Olympic trials track and field meet, top 3 make the team, everybody else stays home. And so some people just didn't make it. Other people were injured or ill. Some people, like Ronaldo Nehemiah, who went to Maryland as well and was a top 110-meter hurdler in the 79, 80, 81 timeframe, actually went pro in football and played in the NFL for the San Francisco 49ers, won a few Super Bowls with them as a wide receiver. He actually commentated my race with Al Michaels in 84. and he got to only sit there in the broadcaster booth. He couldn't compete on the track because at that point in time, if you were a professional athlete in any sport, it made you ineligible to
Mhm.
participate. Now we all know we've got professional basketball players and hockey players and baseball players and others participating in the Olympics, and so that prohibition no longer exists. But that's what I remember most, is just really feeling grateful to be on the team, but also feeling like there was a lot of people that were missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime.
When you got to that moment in 1984, having gone through the previous 4 years and all of the what ifs, when you get to that moment in Los Angeles in 1984, what sort of emotions did that bring out?
So I like to tell a little story about the World Championships the year before. It was the first ever World Track and Field Championships before, the only time we got together uh, with all the countries and all the athletes in the world was every 4 years at the Olympics, and now they do so at least every other year for the Worlds, and so probably only one out of every 4 years that they do not have at least an outdoor World Championships or an Olympic Games. But at that time in Helsinki was the first time we had the World Track and Field Championships, and it was my last year competing for Tennessee. And as you know, college track and field athletes have a long season, starting with the indoor
Mhm.
collegiate season, outdoor collegiate season, then the outdoor national championships, and then we'd go to Europe and compete. And so in August, I had pretty dead legs, but somehow made the final and got eighth place in the world, and which was not thing to sneeze at, but not the performance that I had hoped for at the Worlds. And I had finished the competition, and I was sitting there as they were giving us our clothes back and everything else, warm-ups, and a girl sat next to me named Shirley Strong, and they notified her they were going to do a random drug test, and she was not doping, but it's still a nerve-wracking process. And so she pulled out a cigarette and started smoking after she had smoked me on the track. And I thought to myself, this girl will never beat me again, right? Like Shirley Strong's not going to ever, if I get next to last, she will be the one dead last, right? Like in the race. So first forward a year later, I was thinking about the competition. I had made the Olympic team, and I was thinking about the competition at practice one day. I was living in Knoxville, Tennessee. At the time, having gone to school there. And I was thinking about, visualizing the race and the Coliseum and all that good stuff. And I thought to myself, I had thought about going in the worlds. Oh, I hope I make the final. I hope I run a PR. I hope I beat so and so or something. But I had never really visualized myself being on top of the podium. And that was the first time I had done that. I thought to myself, why not me
Mhm.
be at the top of the podium? Why not me get the gold medal? Why not me cross the finish line first? Why not me get to take the victory lap? And so um, that was really the first time I had had that thought. And I carried that with me for the next few weeks as I prepare for the Olympics. And when we, stood alongside each other, ready for the final, and the gun goes off, about partway through the race, I looked to my right, and Shirley Strong is still there. I thought I was at the head, at leading the race, and somehow I felt like God put wings on my feet, and I just said, "Not today, Shirley," and beat her by 400ths of a second at the end of the day. And so I'm writing a book now called Why Not Me. It's pretty much finished now. I gotta find a publisher and get it edited and all the good things that you got to do. But that's something that sticks with me even today. I ask myself, why not me? Oftentimes when I'm facing a hurdle in life and or an opportunity that I think sometimes that imposter syndrome will creep in and think, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. I don't have the background or experience I need for that particular opportunity. But when I ask myself, why not me? It puts me in that position where I accept the opportunity, and gives me the confidence to think that if I can run 12.84 seconds and win a gold medal in front of not only tens of thousands of people in the stadium. I think there were 80 or 90,000 people in the Coliseum that day, but millions on TV, then I feel like I can muster up the courage and ability to do whatever I set my mind to.
That's that's a great story, and I know that historically you've seen athletes in the 50s and 60s and even a little bit before that for cigarette ads, but I don't know if I've ever heard a story after a top level track and field race of a competitor lighting one up. But
I
that's
know.
great motivation. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
We just got a couple minutes left, and so I do want to just ask you one more question. This we mentioned this is an Olympic year. This year, the Summer Olympics are in Paris. You've worked with the USOC in the past. You've helped train some of the track and field athletes through as a CEO of Sport Performance. In fact, one of the years, 2012, you kind of helped lead them to a record of 29 medals. Do the Olympics continue to give you that same feeling every 4 years when they roll around, especially the Summer Olympiad, or is that something that's kind of gone away, or do you still feel that?
Oh gosh, no, it can't go away. It's still the best feeling in the world to watch athletes fulfill their lifelong dream of Olympic success. And whether I'm there, as chief of sport for USA track and field and directly responsible for the performance of the team, or I'm just a spectator in the stands or a fan watching on TV. Over the years, it's been a true pleasure and a blessing every time I'm able to watch the games. My daughter finished watching the games one year and she's like, Mommy, how many gold medals do most people win? She was like 8 years old. And I said, well, about most people just win one gold medal. And because I was thinking about Michael Phelps or somebody like that. And my husband looks at me and is like, Benita, most people aren't on the team. Most people aren't in the arena. Most people don't, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm only thinking about from an Olympian standpoint. And it was kind of funny, but she said to me, she said, well, Mommy, I can't wait till I win my gold medal, and kids at that age have such an imagination, and so nobody's telling them they can't do something. Nobody has to tell them, think, why not me? Because they automatically put themselves in that position. And so I have a son as well who played basketball and ran track, and it's, to me, helping them fulfill their dreams of whatever that is, being a collegiate D1 athlete. I mean, that's an amazing feat in and of itself. And so I think the Olympics inspire people to be the best they can be. And so that's why I believe in the Olympic movement. I'm on a Senate commission on the US Olympics and Paralympics, and we'll be delivering a report to Congress in the spring of this year, which we're in the process of writing and editing. And I think that too will be a strong legacy for the Olympic and Amateur Sports Act that's been in place since '78, and the reforms that we're looking to that to really ensure that the Olympic movement lives for many, many years to come.
Well, the Olympic movement is strong, and you can see a lot of connections between your Olympic experience and the experiences we talked about earlier with your role in Multiplying Good and many of the other organizations that you're involved with. And you sound like a very, very busy person, so I do appreciate you carving out 30 minutes today to join us on Hall Call.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that is 1998 Virginia Sports Hall of Fame inductee Benita Fitzgerald Mosley. I'd like to thank everyone who will watch, follow along with this edition of the Hall Call interview series, or listen to us in the podcast form. Of course, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors once again for helping us put on Hall Call and all of our initiatives. Be sure to stay up to date on all things Virginia Sports Hall of Fame and the Hall Call interview series and podcast via social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also go to our website, www.vasportshof.com. Once again, I'm Will Driscoll with the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. Whatever you do, participate, don't spectate, and we'll see you next time.